management. Um, it's primarily about asset management and different kinds of industries, different people from different backgrounds. All of them worry about asset management. In my lifetime, I've seen all sorts. People sometimes, um, for people in oil and gas, for example, right? The assets is big, and the way oil and gas companies refer to assets is also different from how others also refer to it. Telecommunications asset management is also a big deal for them in telecommunications. In aviation, asset management um, is also a big deal for them in the shipping industry and in many other industries. Um, so I'm actually doing this today because it's a request. So it's a request from one of my one of our clients that says that, you know what, can I do something specifically for asset management, and that's why we're here. That's why we're here today. So I welcome you all to this session. Hopefully you will it will be a great one, and you will learn a couple of things from this particular session that will help you get better and become, did I say, better professionals across board when it comes to the management of assets. So, uh, yeah, that's it. I will share my screen now. Um, we had something like this about a month. It was about a month ago. Um, thereabout, I did something. I think some YouTube. I can hear the background. Software. Okay, I think you can see. Okay, I've been able to see, so that's fine. Um, so yes, please, everybody should be muted. And if you've got questions, if you've got thoughts, if you've got opinion and all that, please drop your questions, drop your thoughts, drop your opinion all in the chat room. When I'm done with this, then we can I can take a look at it, and I'll try my best. I'll try to answer as many questions as I possibly can answer while we during when I'm done. So my plan is to just take us through this in the next 45 minutes thereabout, and then I'm happy to take questions thereafter. So once again, thank you very much for being here. Let me share my screen. I'll need to switch off my video just to optimize my bandwidth, hopefully, right? Um, but yeah, this is me. So thank you very much, everybody, for being here and for taking the time to join us on this call. I hope everybody can hear me very clearly. Okay. I hope everybody can hear me. Can anybody please confirm? Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, we can.
Okay, brilliant, brilliant. All right, thank you.
I can't hear you clearly. I can't hear you clearly.
Well, if you can, it might be from your end, because some people say they can. Uh,
We can hear you. I can hear you.
okay, all right. So, yeah, that's fine. Okay. All right. So once again, thank you very much, everyone. So this is asset management, ISO 55001. There is an ISO standard specifically for managing assets, various types of assets, various categories of assets. That is what the standard talks about. So you can have a look at it online. There is a specific standard for managing assets. And as I did say, somebody did in the oil and gas industry requested that I hold this session, because a lot of offshore companies, marginal field companies, different organizations, um, they uh, it's important for them. They haven't made it compulsory in some parts of Africa, well, in most parts of Africa, um, to they haven't made it compulsory for people to be certified to the standard. It's not compulsory for people to be certified to the standard in the oil and gas industry. However, some of the organizations who are either in offshore or doing gas or have one field, one OML or the other, a lot of them are doing getting certified to this particular standard. Okay. You also have to be very careful because people in oil and gas, when they say assets, they're talking about the field or a particular, yeah. So, and in fact, they're actually talking about the hydrocarbon sometimes, the people in oil and gas. While if you go to speak to somebody that is in telecommunications and the person says anything around assets, are probably going to be thinking about a mast or something along those lines. So you've got to be mindful of who you're speaking to and try to understand what do they mean by assets. Everybody will use the word asset, just like you're speaking to an accountant or a finance expert or finance specialist of some sort. When you say to them, assets, they think about it in terms of finance, in terms of capital, in terms of how much money you have either in stocks or in bonds or something else. So it's important that all of us bear in mind, at the back of our minds clearly what we mean by an asset. The good thing about the standard is that it doesn't limit it to any kind of asset. It doesn't limit it. So I've seen people apply this in the financial industry. I've seen people apply it in telecommunications. I've seen people apply it in different industries. So this is who we are as an organization. I'll bore you with that. So I have seen this. I have seen different people take this particular standard. I've worked with 3-4 different organizations, specifically with regards to this standard. So I've seen where people apply, but for me, I think the biggest that I've seen is usually in the first. I've done it for these 5 industries, so or been involved with it. So yeah, so it really depends. There's nothing that says that assets must be said in a certain way. So this is directly from the standard. This is directly from the standard. So once again, the broad interpretation of what is an asset is really tied to what the organization wants to look at as an asset, and what the organization does. If you and I go to a manufacturing company, the way they look at assets is different from the way the aviation company looks at it. I worked with somebody who they were selling all sorts of landed properties, and the way they look at assets and interpret assets is also very different. So every organization has to define, every organization that is adopting and implementing the standard has to define what they consider to be an asset. There's a definition that comes in the standard, right? So this is directly from the standard. They say the definition of an asset is an item, thing, or entity that has potential or actual value to an organization. So you can see how broad that is. That is broadly speaking. That is a broad definition, right? And this is critical and it is essential with regards to what we're looking at. An asset it could be an item, it could be a thing, it could be an entity. The key word there is that it has either potential or actual value to an organization. And you know what they say? They say value is in the is in the eyes of the beholder. That's what people say. They say value is in the eyes of the beholder. So it is each organization has to define what value is to them. Each organization has to define what value is to them. So whether you're, well, in modern day though, most people will look at this, will look at something, it must have some kind of financial value. Typically, it will have some kind of direct or indirect financial value. So that's one key criteria. It could be an instant financial value, and it could also be something in the future. There was something else I was going to show here. So yes, this diagram also comes with the standard where it talks about, the way you manage assets or your asset portfolio is got to be aligned to the organization in itself. So if you look at this diagram, it shows the entire organization, asset management, the system. When you've adopted ISO standard is when we can call it a system. If you haven't adopted the standard, you're doing asset management. So I was working with an organization and they were doing fantastic asset management in oil and gas, fantastic asset management. However, what it is that they had not done is that they had not aligned what they were doing directly to an ISO standard. So a lot of organizations manage assets, but it doesn't translate into them, should I say, subjecting it to an ISO standard like ISO 55001. And then people also have the scope of what they say their own asset covers. So in oil and gas, what I see, and also in telecommunications and in manufacturing, what I see a lot is a lot of people are doing asset management, but they have not applied a standard to it. So of course, they're managing their organization. They're doing number two, if you start from the outermost, right? From the outermost, they're doing the managing the organization, the managing assets, right? But most people have not applied an ISO standard to it. And of course, within that whole context also is the portfolio of assets, whatever it is that makes up your own scope of assets as an organization. So I won't bore you with the benefits. There's so many benefits. And I'll share this slide with you, so it's not a problem. Once we have your correct email address, I will share it with you to support the work that you're doing in your own organization. So you see things like financial performance. So you will see things like financial performance, investment decisions. It helps. It helps. For people, everything that have a lot of their investments and assets, then this is not a nice to have. This is a must have for some organizations, because I remember at some point in time, my mom used to work for a very long time for Cadbury, and I remember she used to tell us then that during the periods of downtime or Christmas or something where they're not doing a lot of production, they need to run water through the equipment that were used to produce Bonvita in those days. And she said that it's cheaper to keep running the machines and to keep running water through them and to keep the power on than to stop those equipments and then have to get engineers who will have to fly in. About 3-4 engineers will have to fly in from Germany, and I'm talking about maybe 30 something years ago, about 31 years ago, that I was doing some kind of early internship, I think when I finished secondary school 32 years ago, something like that. So he said it was cheaper to run water through the equipment and just make them look like they're still producing than having to fly in engineers who need to come back in to do a lot of calibration. So I remember that. So the benefits of doing this is a lot, and I don't think it can be, you should underestimate the importance of getting this done in your own organization. Everybody will have different everybody will have a different view of what is important to them. All right. Each organization will, some people will be thinking about finance, some people will be thinking about a decision, just knowing enough in terms of investments. For some people, it's risk. For some people, it's just the throughput and the outputs and the outcomes that come out of their equipment or whatever it is that they regard as an asset. And for some other people, it's also, you know, in this modern day where everybody's always, we're always having the conversation around sustainability. Being sustainable asset management, sustainable maintenance culture, sustainable assets in themselves is important and becomes very critical to everybody. So yeah, those are some of the things in terms of benefits, generally speaking, but every organization will have to think about what is the benefit that makes sense for their own organization. Also, for some people, it's a compliance issue. So definitely in some organizations, the whole thing around this asset management is because there's some regulator that is on their neck that says that, oh, you should be doing this or you should do it. So some people do this because of some kind of compliance or regulation as it is. For some other people, it's just because of part of what we call corporate governance. They just need to demonstrate that they're doing the right thing. So it's, you can take your pick. It's your choice. It's your option. Whatever it is that you consider to be the reason why your own organization should be doing asset management. Let me move on very quickly. All right. So this is the standard. This is the standard in itself. So I've tried to summarize the whole standard into a page. That's what it is that I have done. That's what it is that I have done here right now. I've summarized the whole standard onto a page. I've summarized the entire thing onto a page. Okay. And so we'll go through it. So one of the things I do is to audit this for some organizations who say they have taken it into consideration, and a very clear requirement in terms of how you need to get this done, from clause 4 to clause 5 to clause 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So we'll look at it very quickly, but this is overall for the people who really want to adopt the standard. You must meet all these requirements. It's the sub clauses, and even within the sub clauses, there are what we call sub clauses, so to speak, right? So like lower level sub clauses. So you've got to take and these are compulsory requirements. We'll talk about them in a couple of minutes. But apart from that, the other thing I'm going to speak about today is what I have titled my own asset lifecycle management. And I created this myself. I have no patent on it, but maybe one day I will do that. But I created the top 20 things that I think organizations should bear at the back of their minds that the standard does not necessarily cover. The standard doesn't cover any and everything. The standard covers some things. And I've also now captured the other things that I think people need to take into consideration as they're trying to do asset management properly in their own organizations as it is. Okay, so this is important and this is essential if you're going to do this right as an organization. But let us back up first to the standard. Let's look at the standard very quickly. Right, the standard has got 7 parts to it. So this is part 1, so to speak, that talks about the context of the organization. You can't. There's a company I'm working with. The way it is, and they took over an asset that belongs to some other organization, and I mean a field in this instance, some OML field that took over something from somebody else, but they also now assume. They made an assumption that that in the new field, when the things have taken over, that they will also inherit the management system in the old organization. But that's not the case. Each organization, you have to customize the management system to fit your own organization. This is not a copy and paste type situation, right? This is not a copy and paste type situation. Your adoption of a management system needs to be customized for your own organization. So we like to say it must be fit for purpose and fit for use for your own organization. So you see under the first portion of this whole standard that says the context of the organization, it must be, you have to understand the strategy. That's what that number one means here, that your asset management system must be customized for your own organization and in line with your strategy as an organization. Number two here says that your asset management system, right? The entire asset management system needs to meet both the needs and the expectations of your interested parties. So you need to define who your interested parties are: customers, suppliers, staff, investors, all sorts of categories of interested parties. And the idea here is that your asset management system needs to address the needs. And I always also point out to people that there are two things in there. There's the need, which is like basic requirements, and then there's what we call the expectations, needs, and the expectations of stakeholders. So this is important. And once again, it is essential that you do this and you do it right and you get it right as an organization. That you do this and you do it right and you also get it right as an organization. Further to that, it's the scope. You know, sometimes when people want to adopt a management system, they don't want to adopt it across all their assets yet. Maybe not across all their branches, all their operations globally. So they might say that we're going to start with our Nigerian assets, or we're going to start with our Western assets, or we're going to start with this asset, or we're going to start with our assets in Sudan or in some portion of Africa, in Angola. So they don't have to do big bang where they're trying to cover any and everything at the same time. So you and I can imagine if an organization like one of the telecommunications companies wants to do asset management specifically for all these masts and all the equipment. So they might not start that way. They might say, we're going to cover only the things in Lagos or in Abuja or in the western part of Nigeria, or in the southern part of Nigeria first. So that's what we mean by scope. And the final thing here, under this context of the organization, is the portion that says the asset management system. The asset management system in itself, right? So that really just speaks about all the interacting parts. And this asset management system that is at the bottom, that is the last one on this page, is what it is that I've captured later, or that I've been able to interpret as the asset life cycle. And I'll get there in a bit. Let me move on very quickly because of time. I know a lot of you are on your lunch break, so I'll try to make this very quick. Number two talks about, or the second portion of the standard in itself says the leadership of the organization needs to be committed. That goes without saying. Leadership needs to be committed. Without leadership, nothing gets done. Without leadership, nothing, and I mean absolutely nothing gets done. So leadership commitment, everything rises and falls on leadership is what we like to say. The next one here talks about policy, that we should have a policy, right? We should have a policy. We should have a policy, and the standard talks about very clear guidelines by which the policy needs to be developed. So you can't just develop a policy that seems suitable or acceptable to you. You've got to develop a policy in line with the requirements of the standard. So you should have an asset management policy. And finally, it should have something called organizational roles, responsibilities, and authorities, which is talking about people. It's talking about people, roles, responsibilities. It's talking about people. That, you know, who's the asset manager, who's the portfolio manager, who's the plant manager, who's the facility manager, who's got responsibility for maintenance, different portions of the whole asset management thing. Who exactly are the people who make up the steering committee? So you've got to take that into you've got to have people, and the people will not just, and they must be formally assigned to those roles. They must be formally assigned to those roles, and their responsibilities must also be clearly documented. And HR is usually very much involved with this organizational role responsibility, and who has authority to make one decision or the other. So who's got the authority to make one decision or the other? is important, right? The third part talks about planning, right? And within this planning is a big deal. Of course, you should have one of the things I should have said is that there's something we call a SAMP, a strategic asset management plan, and that is a very tough document to develop. It's very detailed, it's extensive. If you plan to build a SAMP, the strategic asset management plan, and it's probably the most important document. It's the centerpiece for everything that needs to be done. But you can see also here that there's the concept of risk and opportunity management. So there's an ISO standard for risk management, ISO 31000 in itself, which is for risk management. However, you have to have a risk register. You have to have some sort of risk register in the organization. Okay. So that's important that you get that right as an organization. Your risk management, your risk register, whether it's in an Excel document, whether your risk register is in some kind of software, but you must also have some kind of risk management process. We're not talking about enterprise risk now. We're speaking about a risk relative to asset management specifically. But the standard also requires that you capture opportunities. So it's not just risk, it's also opportunity. So the opportunity for you to improve utilization. So when I'm speaking to people, we talk about asset optimization. And there's usually one team or the other in the organization sometimes that know about asset management. So that's important, that you do not just the risk, which is the threat, which is the negative side of things, but also the opportunities. Okay, also the opportunities, right? And then further to that is this big thing here. So this is a massive requirement. This one that says the objectives and the various plans that should be in place to achieve those objectives. That is a big deal, because you have to kind of at the beginning say, why are we even doing this? What exactly is the objective? So you must clearly document your why, which is the objective. But you don't stop at the why. You also have to go all the way to the plans that you need to make to be able to achieve these things. It's the objective and the various plans you need to make to achieve them. So relative to asset management, the objectives and the plans to achieve them. And of course, I always tell people that the best planning methodology is something that is referred to as five W's and 1 H, because even within that, why in there already speaks about the objective. Why are we even doing this? But further to that, it doesn't stop at why. It will now go further to what needs to be done, when will it be done, how will it be done, who's going to do it, many other things relative to this. So the 6 is a big deal. The 6 is a big deal. And you that you're going to be doing this, please bear that clearly at the back of your mind. 7 just says that how do we support this whole management system? That's what 7 is saying, that how do we support these whole management system? All right, how do we support these entire management system? Okay, that is what 7 refers to. So it says we need resources, we need competent people, we need to ensure that we do adequate awareness for the entire staff of the organization. People don't realize that. So right now, we're doing awareness for an organization, and we're doing awareness for the entire organization, including the managing director. So awareness, people need to be aware of what you're doing. Competence, you need competent people. You can't get this done adequately if you don't have competent people. It's important, it's essential that you have competent people and that you have enough resources. And when we mean resources, it could mean money as a resource, financial resource, people as a resource, equipment, spare parts, consumables, whatever that thing is as a resource. So you need resources, you need competent people, you need to do awareness for everybody in the organization. You need to do like an all year round communication. You need to keep reminding people about asset management, maybe every week, maybe every other week, maybe once a month, maybe sending emails. I was checking one oil and international, one IOC, International Oil and Gas Company, recently, and their asset management policies, even on their public-facing website. So you need to, and for that is part of communication. So you need to ensure that you do the communication and you do the communication appropriately. Further to that, it's information requirements. The here is just referring to reporting. Really, that's what it's talking about. It's just talking about the kinds of reports and the kinds of intelligence that you need to generate. The kinds of reports and the kinds of intelligence you need to generate. And finally, all ISO standards have something called documented information, and the idea behind documented information is that you should follow a documentation approach, a labeling approach, some kind of versioning approach as an organization, right? So you should not manage policies and procedures, name them however you want to name them, label them however you want to label them, keep them wherever you want to keep them. That is not the right approach. So the idea is that you follow through with these things. Clause 8, which really is the, should I, in local parlance, we'll say that's the cocoa of the matter. That's like the core of the whole matter, so to speak. Talks about operational planning and control. So wherever those assets are, the things you consider to be an asset, the equipment, whatever that's called an asset, how do we plan, operate and control them? And the big deal here is you have to have SOPs covering literally any and everything in the organization. In reality, the most important ISO standard is ISO 9001. That is the most important standard, right? So in reality, any organization that is going to be doing this should have implemented ISO 9001 on one hand. On the other hand, is to do what we call like a combined implementation of 9001 and 55001, because 9001 talks about the quality of all the processes in the organization, and 9001 makes it compulsory that all your critical processes have SOPs. So when we get into this place, is either you start to develop the SOPs from scratch, or you just leverage SOPs that have been built already. But that's what we mean by operational planning and control. SOPs that guide how things are done. Then this standard is also big on change. What are all the changes that are happening? Changes to people, changes to processes, changes to documents, changes to equipment, changes to location, changes to everything. And it makes a requirement that you must track all these changes. That you must track all these changes. It makes a requirement. So you must have a change management process. You must have a change register. It's a lot of work to be done around number 2. And finally, every entity that you've outsourced a portion of your work to and is critical to those assets, you need to have clear contracts and SLAs with them. Every entity that has anything to do with, so there's a client working with the entity that is doing calibration for them is an external entity. So we had to look at the contracts and the SLAs and many other things that are tied to that particular entity. That's what this outsourcing is. The other thing is that the representatives of those outsourced entities, those vendors, those suppliers also need to go through some kind of awareness with you. So they must also be aware of their responsibilities relative to asset management, because you're adopting a standard for it. So, but people skip these things. People skip them. Sometimes people have an SLA or a contract, but the contract does not tie it directly to the assets in each of the locations. So this is important. And second to the last, when it comes to the standard in itself, is performance evaluation. I like to always call that number 1, MMAE, monitoring, measurement, analysis, and evaluation, which is just talking about KPIs and similar type things. Red, green, amber, those kinds of things that show you where you are, the status of things in the organization, KPIs, metrics and measurements, and how you do monitoring. And a lot of people have all sorts of monitoring software, monitoring electricity, monitoring pressure at the pumps, monitoring one thing or the other. That's what that number one here on my page says. It's also compulsory that an internal audit is done. It's important, it's essential, and it is compulsory that an internal audit is done. So an internal audit must compulsorily be done. And last but not the least is a management review needs to be done. And so your internal audit can be you can use your internal auditors, but they must be trained on the standard in itself and on asset management. Or you can also outsource the internal audits to an outside entity that has got the skills and the capabilities to be able to do proper audits relative to asset management and relative to the standard being adopted. Lastly, here is management review. The executives of the organization need to be involved with monthly, quarterly, or half-year type reviews. The executives need to be involved. Asset utilization, asset performance reports, and those kinds of things. Issues and challenges on site, changes being made, because during that management review, somebody presents, and the standard is also very clear with regards to the input to the management review. The standard is very clear with regards to the input to the management review. And the other thing is decisions need to be made during the management review meeting. Decisions to improve things, decisions to change things, decisions to intervene in certain situations, all sorts of decisions, people decisions, system decisions, financial decisions. Decisions must be made. The standard does not say you should do it at a certain interval, but my recommendation to most of my clients is always around quarterly reviews. Quarterly reviews relative to any management system that you're adopting. And last but not the least, tied to the standard in itself. Last but not the least is clause 10 that says that, everything that is bad that has come out of clause 9, either it came out of an audit or it's come out of management review meetings, or it's come out as a part of indicators that are not doing well. Whatever that thing is, we can consider them to be non-conformities, and corrective actions need to be taken. Corrective actions need to be taken. And you should also have a tracker. You have a tracker for the non-conformities. You have a tracker for the corrective actions. Those corrective actions must be clearly documented. When will they be done? What exactly will be done? Who is going to do them? And a status that says that, oh, it's been done, and this particular non-conformity has been closed. Okay. Further to that is preventive action. Okay. This is one of the very few standards that has this portion called preventive actions. This is one of the very few standards that has something called preventive actions. Most standards don't have that in there, but this particular standard is got it because it's assets. So we can't tie assets only to corrective actions. To assets, we must also have preventive actions. Okay, so these are the 10 clauses, and then finally here is continual improvement. Continual improvement is not just addressing non-conformity, it is moving up the asset management maturity, asset management sophistication and maturity ladder, so to speak. That's what we mean by continual improvement. So as I said earlier, these are the 24 sub-clauses. I've just gone through all of them. I've just spoken about all this, which is tied to the standard in itself. So, and once again, if your organization assets are critical to your own organization, equipment are critical, right? Then you should adopt this standard. You should. It's important. It's essential that you adopt this particular standard. Okay. Once again, because of time. Now, I don't think this standard. I think personally, and this is my personal opinion, my professional opinion, I must say, I think you also need to take these 20 things that are written here into consideration. So it's not just that it's not just that you should take the components of the standard, the 24 sub-clauses and the standard into consideration. You should also take these 20 things into consideration. And as I said, I wrote this myself. I built it over time, working with different people, because sometimes, as I said, this is asset management. The other one is the asset management system. When we say asset management system, we're referring to an overall system. But when we say asset management or asset lifecycle management, we're just referring to you doing that particular thing, not necessarily subjecting it to an ISO standard. But here, this is not the ISO standard. These are just my own thoughts for organizations generally that do asset management. These are just my own thoughts for organizations that do asset management, generally speaking. Okay, please give me a second. My dog is about to bite somebody. Sorry, 1 second. Sorry, I apologize. I just didn't want had to harass somebody. Now let me go into this. I'll talk about this very quickly. I'll spend 20 minutes and that'll be it. And that'll be it. So this is not the standard, everybody. This is Orlando's life cycle. What Orlando has written as asset or equipment life cycle. The key considerations for managing assets end to end. I wrote this. This is not this ISO standard, but I think it's useful. I think it's very useful. First is that you should have some kind of strategy, governance, and management and how you plan assets. And you can see it here, I also referred to the SAM, that thing called a SAM. I referred to it here also. So for me, that's number one. That really is number one. Okay? That really is number one. Should have a SAM. And that's what it is that I referred to here. Okay. So your organization needs to have a strategy around how you manage assets, and the way you manage your asset needs to be aligned to the company strategy. Also, your board needs to be involved, especially when your assets are critical to the operations of your organization. This is a board level type conversation, and how you manage these assets and how you do the planning for them. This is a board level type conversation, and this is important, and it's essential that you get this right. Number two here is, how do you even acquire these assets? How do you do the procurement of your assets, and how do you register them? Because these are areas that, in my experience working with different organizations, I see so much trouble and problems and all sorts of things around this. People don't acquire properly, they buy the wrong things, they buy things that you can't find local vendors to support them, they buy things that I mean, I've seen an organization buy things that have gone out obsolete, like there is no more support for that particular thing by the original equipment manufacturer, and somebody in Nigeria is still buying them. I've gone to an electricity company in Cameroon to do some work in the past, and it had all sorts of problems. I've been with an electricity company in Nigeria, in the eastern part of Nigeria, and all sorts of challenges with what they're even buying. So sometimes they can't find information. Who did they buy them from? Warranty that is allowed for those things, just too much trouble. Okay. All right. So acquisition, procurement, and how you register. Where are you doing the registration? Okay. Right. In what system would we find the details of how you register the asset? Organization relative to how they're doing asset management, or relative to how they've adopted the standard. And sometimes when we're doing gap analysis or something along those lines, you have to check the gaps relative to standard but some people have not adopted the standard, but they still have gaps. So I can do a simple gap report just tied to these 20 things. And I've said that when I looked at the client, I didn't derive enough comfort from the evidence, the documents, the records, the reports, and even from my site inspection relative to this thing. So I can use this for gap analysis in itself. Okay, I move on very quickly. Number 3 here, and I was going to even add RFID here. Yeah, at least that's what some people are using. Okay, so this is also a challenge in certain places. This is also a challenge in certain places and in certain situations, whereby the people are just not, they just haven't implemented an appropriate identification mechanism. Like the client has just not implemented an appropriate asset identification, the way they do the labeling. I'm not talking about document labeling here. I'm talking about the actual asset and how they do the tagging and how they do the tracking. This is a huge challenge for a lot of people. And that's why when you check their records, the record you find in one location is completely different from the record you find in another location. So our assets are identified, labeled, tagged, and tracked. And there are many things to track about an asset. You can track performance, you can track safety, you can track all sorts of things relative to assets. All right. Okay, let me move on very quickly. Asset ownership and who's the custodian of the asset? Who owns it and who is the custodian? That is also something else to worry about. I've seen, especially sometimes especially when we're doing this for maybe IT companies, data centers, those types of organizations. On one hand, they will say, those types of organizations, they will say, oh, this thing is owned by this person. By the time you go to meet the person, that person will say that, okay, I don't own this thing. This is not for me. It's not my responsibility. I don't own this. And I see that happening. So ownership and who has got custody of assets, because the health and the management of that asset is usually tied to who is the owner and who's got custody of the asset in itself. Okay, so this is also very essential. And once again, I review organizations relative to these things, and sometimes I just don't have enough. I just don't have great enough information for this. Number 5 here is talking about people. I remember that when we're talking in the standard, we talked about 7.2, which is competence. 7.2, which is competence. Here, we say, I looked at people, their roles, responsibilities, and are they capable? Do they have great engineers? Do they have great maintenance officers? Do they have great vendors who support them? Do the vendors have the right skills, the right knowledge, the right capabilities to be able to support the organization? Most assets and most equipment are badly managed. Most assets and most equipment are badly managed. And one of the reasons is because they just don't have great people. The roles have not been assigned, responsibilities have not been communicated, and then the people just don't have the right skills. All right, this is another issue. How are you classifying and categorizing your assets as an organization? If you're doing everything in some kind of Excel document, your drop-down buttons, what will it bring to me? Will it show me that these are financial assets, these are equipment that need to go, this is inventory, this is consumable, these are equipment tied to a location, or these are equipment tied to a certain function? Most times when I look at the Excel document that the client provides, it just doesn't give me enough information. Just doesn't give me adequate information with regards to how they're doing their classification and the categorization of their assets. It just doesn't give enough. Okay. Further to that, which now ties to the register. So of course, a lot of people still use some kind of Excel document. I don't think using an Excel document is great. I don't think it's the right way to approach it. I think it's a way to start, but that you have to start making plans for much better approaches to managing your assets, and software is better. A lot of them are called enterprise asset management software. So if you go to Google and just type EAM software, enterprise asset management software. So companies who are doing asset management and are relatively mature, they do this. Companies who are doing asset management and they're relatively mature, they do this. Okay, so once again, it's important that you think through this and you consider how this is being done, how this should be done in your own organization. Of course, you can start with Excel. That's not bad. Everybody starts from somewhere, but you can't end in Excel. You've got to go beyond Excel to be able to. There's a reason why everybody used to use Excel for their accounting, but now people have accounting software. Everybody used to use Excel for HR, and now we have HR software. Everybody used to use Excel for vendor management. Now we have ERP. So even for your asset management, you've got to go beyond just using some kind of spreadsheet to moving it onto some kind of software over time. And then the software needs to be configured right and things like that. Yes, the next thing really is how your asset, is how assets are installed, configured, how they're calibrated, because that's a big deal, and how they're deployed. Sometimes I've seen big generators that people have had that went wrong from the very beginning. Right? That means it was never installed right, was never configured right. From the scratch, from the start, never installed right, never configured right from the very beginning. Okay, installation, configuration, calibration, and how you deploy. And then everybody needs an expert when it comes to calibration. I have a client in Ghana that wants to do the ISO standard 17025. 17025, which is really for should I say it's a laboratory management system. They are oil and gas companies, but they do seismic assessment, they take samples and they go test it in the laboratory, and they're partnering with somebody who says that they must provide that the lab that they're using must have that certification. So once again, how are you doing the installation? How are you doing the configuration? How are you doing the calibration of the assets in themselves? And how are you doing the deployment? Okay, all right. Yeah, I like these words, and that's why I wanted to represent the meanings of the words, because these are words that people use interchangeably. These are words that people use interchangeably. People will say availability, reliability, serviceability. These things mean different things. So when we say something is reliable, it can work without interruption for an extended period of time. When we say it is maintainable, okay, how it can quickly be restored if it goes down. And when we say it is serviceable, it look like similar words that people use interchangeably, but indeed these things mean all sorts. They mean different things. They mean all sorts and they mean different things. Okay, so reliability, how do you measure this relative to your asset or your equipment or whatever you call an asset? Are you mixing all these things? Because when I come to an organization and I start to ask, how long does this work before it goes down? All right. When it goes down, how long does it take before you bring it back up? And what is your maintenance cycle? What is the number of hours, just like your vehicles, that you must say, oh, you must do X number of hours, and by the time you've done this number of hours, then it should be serviced. Then it should be serviced. Okay. All right. Okay. And number 10 here, it's the assets. So once again, this is tied to like SOPs. Are the asset processes? Do you have clearly written SOPs? Do you have clearly written SOPs and flowcharts? Most people don't have flowcharts for their environment. So when I'm asking, because I'm not an expert I don't consider myself an oil and gas expert. I only know management systems and I know technology, not an expert. So the only way by which things make meaning to me is when I look at the flow chart. So if you're explaining something to me, I usually would like to see a flow chart. It's a picture versus 1,000 words. That's what it is. I like to see a flowchart that explains that so that I can clearly understand where the inputs are and I can trace it. So I can then do what we call traceability. But people don't maintain great documents, even for very advanced organizations. Very poor SOPs or maybe non-existent SOPs, or the SOPs are completely outdated. No flowcharts, nothing for an auditor or somebody else to look at to say, you know what, provide this to me so that of this. Okay. Very quickly, I put two things together here, which is risk and change. Once again, if you got questions, if you got thoughts, if you've got opinion, please drop them in the chat room. And when I'm done, I'll be done in 10 minutes. So I'll just have a look and we can all talk about it. I know some people on the call, some of my friends, colleagues, clients are on the call. Some of them are experts in some areas that we're looking at. Okay, so here I captured two things: risk management, which is in the standard, and also change management, which is also in the standard. Once again, you should have flow charts like this. You should have process document that says this is how you do asset risk and this is how you do changes with regards to assets. Risk management is a big deal when it comes to whatever it is you're calling an asset. And so here, I'm very specific, not to general risk, but risk tied to what you call an asset, and a change management process that you follow relative to making changes, process changes, procedural changes, spare part changes, maintenance changes, whatever changes those things are, they need to be tracked and captured. Move on very quickly. Utilization and outputs are also very important, right? This is where your return, I mean, this is your outcome, isn't it? Poor utilization and poor outputs, and you have a problem. There's a reason why you own those assets. So some people own assets that are just like in IT. A lot of people in IT have systems that they only use 10% of the capabilities of the software. A lot of IT, the system, they buy it just to do one thing. So they bought something that can do 100 things, but they only use it to do one. And they have needs for that the system can meet, but they don't touch it. So utilization of assets, because assets cost you money, they're valuable. I mean, there's finance that goes into the procurement of assets. So you need to monitor utilization and your output. Utilization and output very quickly. Once again, maintenance and faults, like, and here I like to differentiate between when something is an issue versus when it's a risk. They're two different things. Once again, the history of assets need to be in the software. And then we need to find some kind of maintenance history. We also need to find a fault or issue history. If you use an Excel document, that would be great. Is the Excel document complete? Is all the information that is needed, are they all written in there? These are key things to note. All right. So I move on very quickly. This is a big deal. The finance experts on the call, this is their thing. And this is a thing of life and death. There's a client. I mean, I've seen all sorts in my short career. In my short 21 years, 21, 22 years of work, I've seen all sorts. I was sharing with somebody, I said, I did the valuation for somebody a while ago, and the people had bought another company and all the assets were valued at X, but by the time we looked into the report, not all those assets are gone past what we call useful life. All of them are done, they were all obsolete, and in reality, in the books, they should cost zero. I've also done somebody who bought a land or wanted to use it for somebody or something, and they had all sorts of equipment and trucks and all that, but they bought the land with it. But they never took into consideration how much you take to dispose of the rubbish that is on the land, the trucks and all the other equipment there. They didn't even realize that they needed permits to be able to even dispose of those things. So they made they made an investment, and 3-4 years after, they had not even started the journey of generating any kind of return from the investment. This is a big deal. So sometimes when people are doing mergers and acquisitions, I've done that for a couple of organizations, they will involve me and I'll look at the asset and I'm like, you know what, this asset's already gone past end of life. They literally, they are in the negative. They should be in the negative in the books. Because sometimes the cost of disposal even now takes it even into the negative. So you might not have expertise around here. Then you need to get somebody who truly understands the type of valuation, the type of impairment, the type of depreciation that applies. Okay. We've talked about this earlier: metrics, measurement, how you do monitoring, KPIs relative to the assets, quantitative measures, and hopefully you have great dashboards. In modern day, the way by which reporting is done is via dashboards. So hopefully you have great dashboards that would help you with regards to monitoring, measurement, and metrics for your assets, output, utilization, downtime, all sorts. It's an endless list of things. Okay, I spoke about this earlier, but when I spoke about it, then I was really looking at the process flow documents. Here, I'm just speaking generally. I'm just speaking generally about you just having all the right policies and procedures, all your SOPs and things like that. So that's what this is about. And I barely have seen any client in any line of work that does not have, that is great when it comes to their SOPs. The good ones who have SOPs, the SOPs are outdated. All right, very quickly, replacement, transfer, decommissioning, and disposal of assets is also something, and I think I've spoken about this already. How do you replace? How do you transfer? How do you decommission? A lot of people don't have a procedure, a defined way and approach by which they do decommissioning. So if you come to a client site, we would ask, how do you do decommissioning? And we need to see evidence that you're doing the proper and the right thing relative to decommissioning your assets. Okay. And sometimes disposal sometimes is not easy or straightforward. There's also all the things around community engagement and sustainability. Are your disposal methods injurious to people, to health of your own staff, and to the communities and the locations where you operate? People call this the soft side of things, but I don't think it is soft. I think it is very hard. I think communication and stakeholder management, a lot of people in oil and gas, this is their problem, managing the stakeholders. I was with a client recently, the person was saying that, that the expectation of the people in the community is unreasonable. I said, why are you not going to talk to that one now? You work internally in the company, all right? So they say, that is unreasonable. The people want you to do this, the people want you to do that. I said, but you're making profit from their environment. So you need communication experts, you need stakeholders, and you need to ensure that the way you do your outsourcing is properly done when it comes to these things. People say communication stakeholder is soft. There's nothing soft about it. I always tell people that countries go to war because of communication and stakeholder management. People lose contracts because of communication and stakeholder management. So there's nothing easy, straightforward, or soft when it comes to this. Second to the last is around this. So this is an essential piece of work. Coming to inspect, coming to review, coming to audit, and checking if your organization has put this in place appropriately. Some people have assets, equipment, manufacturing plants, all sorts of things that there's been no formal end-to-end audit of those environments for years. Every time I subject people to this, they struggle significantly. Lastly, everybody is reporting and intelligence, and I think we've spoken about this, reporting and intelligence. I believe we have spoken adequately about this. Because at the end of the day, whether you're sitting with the board, whether you're sitting with the executives, whether you're sitting with the shareholders, you need to present reports to them, and you need to do this. So, as I said, this 20, I put them together. I have a more extensive document, but this is what I in review. Person, please, can you help me mute that person?
No,
Right. Right. Okay, people. Pretty much that's it. So I committed myself to doing one webinar a month for 1 year. So I've committed myself to doing this. So last month we did something on corporate social responsibility. This month we're doing asset management. Next month, the month of June, I'm going to do something around compliance, and it will just go on. A lot of people are looking forward to climate change, and we're also looking forward to that, and a couple of other things. So pretty much that's it. This is the second in the series that we're doing for a whole year, and I'm happy that you all have taken out of your very extensive time to join us on this call. I'll stop sharing, and I will go to the chat room, and let me see what questions we have. Apart from the questions in the chat room, if any other person has a specific question, I will try to answer. If I'm unable to answer, the good thing is that I have some of my friends here who are experts in some of these areas. Some of them, they've been working in these kinds of things for a very long time, so I'm sure they'll be able to help. So, but you can speak if you want to speak, and I'll also look at the things we have in the chat room. Okay, we will share the slides with you. So if you registered, that means we will share the slides with you. We'll even share an examination. It's like a foundation examination for asset management with you, and it's for free. So if you've registered, you will get the slides. Somebody's saying, is it possible to build an online portal that can serve? Oh, yes, absolutely. Oh, yeah. First, there are many softwares. I was looking at Info. There are a couple of EAM solutions, and you can also build yours. If you've got a great developer, you can definitely build yours in the organization. So, yes, you can. So you can build yours, you can deploy it however you want to deploy it, right? Please prepare your questions and drop it. Okay, good. What else here? How do you leverage outside of the webinar? How do you leverage your competencies? Okay, so you're saying that if you build some competence from here, how do you leverage it? I mean, you need to go deeper. You will definitely need to go deeper. When I train people on this, it's usually a 21-hour course that we deliver over a 3-day period, or sometimes over a 4-day period. It depends on what the organization is looking at. So it's a lot. This is just an initial. This is just a 1-hour training. We would also allow you to do an exam, but I mean, it's going to be, if you want to become an expert, you want to become an asset manager for an electricity company or for an oil and gas company, a lot of them, they're also called maintainability. They're also called maintainability engineers and things like that, or maintainability managers, also manage assets. Then, of course, you're going to need to do way more than this. But this is the start. This is the starting point. You need to be familiar with software, and you need to kind of maybe pick an industry of expertise. Yes, we'll share a link. We will put this on YouTube, and we will share a link for people who might want to listen to it at another time. And yes, you will pass an exam, and with that, you will get your certificate of participation. You will take a foundation exam, and you'll get your certificate of participation. All right, people, those are the questions that I have there. Any other thoughts, comments, opinion as we bring this to a beautiful close? Comments, thoughts, opinion as we bring this to a beautiful close. Any other person? All right, people. I think that might be it. Most people are quiet. So once again, I thank you for joining me on this particular webinar for the month of May. I'll be back here in the month of June doing something for compliance. And I'm certain that that will be a really big event tied to compliance. All right. So once again, we'll send you an email. The team will send you an email. Marina and Innocent that put this together on a monthly basis, and they will share the exam links with you. It's only for a period, so you got to do it over like a 3-day period. If you don't do it, that'll be it. It's ordinarily not a free exam, but I made it free for the people who attend this particular webinar. All right, people, thank you very much. Once again, thank you